Hello, and welcome to our Eduro Learning video series, Coaching Fundamentals. In this series, we'll hear from 12 experienced instructional coaches from around the world on topics like how do you define the role of a coach, and what are your best strategies in a coaching conversation. One of my favorite things about coaching as a career is that it's all about learning. And we know part of the learning process sometimes is having a failure and learning from that failure, taking it as an opportunity to grow. Today, our network of experienced coaches are going to share one of their own brilliant mistakes. A mistake that maybe seemed like a failure at the start, but actually turned out to be an awesome learning opportunity. My name is Kim Cafino, and I will be your host throughout this series. I've been really fortunate to be an instructional coach in schools around the world for the last almost 20 years, and I've learned a ton from these conversations, so I am super excited to share them with you.
So part of being a coach, well, just a teacher in general too, is reflect. Things happen. You try things and they don't work, and how do I improve my practice from that? And so something that happened for me that I was thinking of that really was more of my mindset changed after this happened. It made me think about this more. Is I was working at this international school in China, and I worked my first year as an innovation coach. It was the second year of iPads in the classroom. So I worked with a lot of different grade levels. I was going into classrooms a lot. I was working with the teachers a lot. I was presenting about iPads. I was doing sessions with the kids about iPads. So the second year as a coach, I was sitting in our IT coach's office, and I saw all the second grade teachers and the kids go into our small auditorium there, which is right next to where our office. And the curtain closed, and so I could hear them talking, and I heard the teachers presenting about, we have iPads in the classroom, here's how we're going to use them, here are the things that we're going to do. And I was sitting there, and I was like, why didn't I know about this? Why am I not in there? This is, they're talking about iPads, I should be there. And our director of learning innovation at the time, John Burns, was sitting in the office at the same time, and he said, Diana, this is a good thing. And it made me realize, no, this is good. They're doing it on their own. I worked with them. I don't need to help them with this. They can do it on their own. So remembering that, that's a good thing, that they're doing things independently on their own. So it was that reminder of me that I don't have to be there for everything technology, that if their teachers are doing it on their own, especially after I work with them. And that was my mistake was my attitude about it for about 30 seconds. And then that, like, wait a minute, this is good. They're doing it themselves.
Being a tech guy, Mike and I realized, we worked really, really hard, and we were lucky there's been very little turnover, but it definitely steered our course, the fact that we worked really well with our staff, and they didn't need us as tech guys anymore. They're super confident and super excited to find apps and to work with iPads and all that stuff. And that's definitely bumped us along to becoming more proactive and really dedicating ourselves over the last 2 years to finding a pathway into their learning mind, rather than this sort of more pure tech stuff. So that's something that has definitely guided my course.
Okay, so my first year, one of those hiccups that I had was, I went into the role as someone who was already building a pretty strong social media presence. Like, I loved it. I thought that Twitter made me such a good kindergarten teacher, because every time I went on, someone was doing something amazing that I was like, oh my gosh, I have something to work toward now. And I wanted to share that with as many of my new colleagues as I could. And so with one particular team that I thought would be open to it and get it, I just kind of went in and said, let's try it. Let's all sign up and let's do it. And then we went through it, and they did it. Like, they walked through the steps with me. They all signed up for accounts. We tried it in a very specific unit, in a specific way. But at the end of the day, it became extremely overwhelming for them. And it flopped entirely. Like, some people got it, some didn't. It was confusing. And for some, they were just like, there's too many people tweeting at me. I don't know what to do. So from that's where I actually got my structure of when I walk into a team meeting. state my goal, state the why, explain in detail how I think it will look, and then always ask, do you want feedback? I mean, do you feel comfortable with this? And do you see any possible conflicting areas? And let me know right now. And since then, I haven't had that situation happen again, because it wasn't me jumping in and telling them what to do. It was me offering something that I think could be really good, but at the same time, acknowledging that they are the teacher who will be implementing it and they know what their classroom looks like and feels like.
Having something completely blow up and just having to deal with it and having people see that and that you're okay with it, I think it's disarming for other people. Like they have this conception you have to always be, perfect on the stage. No, not always. And so one specific moment that came to mind was last year when I was brand new here and I was, being introduced at I think it was the high school co-curricular. So all the high school students were there. All the high school teachers were there. And I got up on stage to present something, but it wasn't my computer. It was the high school director's computer. And he had it set up for me, which was a weird way, like for his arrow keys to work. They were sort of like reverse of what they were supposed to be. And so I went to do the presentation and I started trying to go to my next slide and I couldn't get it to work. And finally I just stopped and, kids were giggling and the teachers were kind of like, oh, what's going on? The ed tech guy can't do it. And I just turned to Malcolm and I was like, how is your computer set up? I don't understand it. And he was just, oh, and he just walked over and showed me. And then I was fine. But it was a great moment because everybody saw the ed tech guy fail with ed tech stuff. And it was like, oh, and he rolled with it. He didn't let it fluster him. He didn't get freaked out. He didn't get angry. He didn't get frustrated. He just, turned to somebody else and said, I'm sorry, I don't know how this is working with yours. Can you please explain? And so I think it actually ended up being a great moment, even though it could have potentially been disastrous in so many ways. It really actually wasn't.
All right, so let me share a coaching failure with you. There's a teacher who is close to retirement. Not that all people close to retirement fit this stereotype, but she was afraid of using technology in her class. There was some motivation for her to use technology from administrators, which I did not know. There was some stuff happening, behind the scenes, which I learned a long time later. So she was willing to work with me, and she wanted to do a sort of timeline activity. And so I helped her, design the activity, think out all the steps, work on understanding what to do. And a couple of things happened. So I co-taught with her the first time around. And then I left. I had to be somewhere the next period. And then I came back to see how it went. And when I came back to see how it went, she said, oh, we skipped it. We didn't even do it. And I was like, what? This is what we've been working towards. And as I probed a little bit deeper, I found out that she couldn't remember how to log in to our Google Apps account. And so, of course, my immediate response was, well, did you ask the kids? And she was like, oh, gosh, no, I don't want them to know that I don't know. And so that was the first time that I really even knew that attitude existed. And that might seem naive. Maybe everybody should know that. But I've never felt that way as a teacher. I've always been like, oh, I don't remember this. You guys, what do I do? I've always asked my students for help. And so that to me was a little bit of a failure that I didn't think about that. And then within the same project, we get to the end of it. And I can't remember what tool we were using. It doesn't matter. We get to the end of the project and the teacher says, okay, so now we're going to print these, right? And I was like, what? And so I tried to print. And of course, whatever tool we used, it was not printable in a nice way. And so I had to go in and say, I'm sorry, it's not going to work to print. And the teacher kind of flipped out or just really had a meltdown and was like, you're disappointing the students. We can't display these. And she just to the point where I had to give her space and not really interact for a little while. And so I waited until she calmed down. And I guess the thing that I had to learn to do was go and apologize for something I didn't think I had to apologize for. And because really, in a way, it was my mistake. I didn't probe deep enough. I didn't ask, what do you want the product to be? You know, if I had asked her those questions, I would have found out, oh, you want to print this? All right, we're going to choose a tool that facilitates that. So that was my mistake. And so I just kind of had to, it took me a week to realize that and be able to articulate an apology and go back to her and fix that relationship. So yeah, I think that was my big coaching fail, but also a big learning, you know, a big, like sometimes you have to apologize even when you don't want to in order to fix the relationship.
I think one of the mistakes that I make is feeling like everybody has to be doing everything. And I know, like with any, like not just with technology stuff, but with other stuff, if you have a math number talks and you expect everyone's going to be doing it at a certain level, it's not necessarily going to happen. I don't know if that's a mistake or just sort of more of a realization for me.
One of my brilliant mistakes has been expecting things to change really quickly. I had one example where I worked with one team on a project that worked really well, and it just didn't seem to translate to another grade level, and I couldn't understand why. But when I thought back on it, what I realized was it was a really slow process to get working in that first grade. First, I had to find my willing person and get them to try something out, and then we had to build some examples, and then we had to bring it back to the team. And I realized that what I thought was a really quick process had actually taken a couple of years to get going in one team, and I was expecting it to work overnight in the other one. So for me, figuring out that it takes a long time to make change happen sometimes, and that's okay, was a big piece of learning for me.
So one of the, I guess, biggest failures, or maybe one of the biggest things that I've learned is by actually watching other coaches. And it really kind of opened my eyes to sort of the perception of others, or when someone comes to work with you, you know, we want to help them so badly that we make it more about us developing a solution and connecting them with the right resources, etc., and less about, you know, helping them. And so I think that's one of the things I've learned, is really sort of remove myself in the situation. It's really about, you know, teaching teachers, students, and the learning that's happening. So that needs to be the focus. And so we're, you know, as a coach, we're kind of orbiting around that. And so we have to understand, you know, where our orbit is. Like sometimes it's really far, sometimes it's really close, you know, but it's never the sun. You know, we're not the sun, so we got to make sure that way.
On a personal level, as opposed to a professional level, one of the things I've learned is when to coach and when not to coach. So the personal example that I could give you is with my own children. And sometimes one of them has come to me with an issue. For example, my son came once about a woman that he works for, who he was actually in charge of, but she was in her 40s and she always arrived late because she was a mother with young children, and she also wanted to leave early to get her kids. And I went straight into the coaching model with him because I thought, oh, it's a problem. I can do a problem resolving conversation. And actually, that as a mother wasn't really the right response. I would have been better being a mom in that situation. And so I think one of the things that I've had to think about is, although I'm really enthusiastic about coaching, there's other relationships outside of the coaching relationship that I actually feel I need to be nurturing in a different way. And that, in fact, some of the skills I've learned as a coach can be applied in personal and family relationships, and other ones cannot. And it's a matter of, you know, knowing which one to use at that time. So after that conversation with my son, which I did over Skype, the following day I thought about it and I thought, you know, that wasn't really what he needed. He phoned his mum to get something else, not a coaching conversation. So then I phoned him back and I was the mum.
So I think a brilliant mistake of mine was to ask for 5 minutes of every faculty meeting so that I could do a quick tech tip. And while I know that people did end up using some of those tech tips and there was learning going on there, I think the mistake in that was, well, first of all, it set tech aside. So however long the meeting is, 5 minutes is tech and the rest is analog, which is not true. The whole idea is that we would integrate these things, and that technology could be a tool to do whatever else we're doing. And I feel like what I was doing when I did that is I kind of set the model for teachers to be like, well, tech can always just be this little, oh, tick, we did the tech thing, and then we're going to go do this kind of traditional non-technology infused learning that may or may not have been the right way to go. But I think I was setting up a model, an incorrect model. Where I got to after that was that I worked with administrators to demo technology integration without talking about it. And so I worked with the administration if they were going to do some sort of feedback thing where they wanted to get people's opinions and then show the staff, here's what you guys said, that I would work with the administrators so that they felt comfortable doing that with the faculty on the fly. And they could say, hey, and if this is something you want to use in your classroom, you should talk with Patrick about it. And I think we got into a good place, for one, because I removed myself from the front. I was no longer the only person who could do a tech tip. And I also positioned my learning leaders, my administrators, as people who were modern learners, people who could continue to learn new things and engage people in new ways with new tools that could help than previous methods. And so I think it was a small thing, but I think, we shouldn't, in my role, you shouldn't be fighting for those 5 minutes of this is all about what my role is, but to try to make it seamless and infuse it and elevate other people as leaders in the area that you're also a leader.
Years ago, I would take someone's no to an idea, or I think instead of coaching the individual, I would sort of try to coach the idea. And I think you have to not make it personal. It is not about you. And that's kind of one of those life lessons that is true that I think we need to learn and relearn in almost all areas of our life. But I think as a coach, you really need to not take other people's reactions so personally, because it's not about you. And I think other people's teaching styles, other people's reactions within a conversation or a workshop, 9 times out of 10, it has absolutely nothing to do about you personally. And I think, I've run workshops before where I've thought, oh, that person really does not like what we're doing right now. And then a week later, I'll kind of have that water cooler chat with that person, and they'll reference like, oh, I was really interested in thing X. So, I think, don't try to assume that you ever know what somebody else is thinking about an idea. And even if they don't like that idea, it is not your job to force them to like the idea. It's your job to help people where and when they want to be helped.
I don't know if there's any one thing that I would point to, but I think over time, I think we all make the same types of mistakes and they just get less and less. And it's about how do you bring about change and how do you help shepherd change in a community. There's a lot of literature out there from lots of different authors, whether it's Thomas Fullen or Sangay or whoever it happens to be, about change and change management. You can't take those wholesale off the shelf. It's a matter of understanding what the change initiative is and how do you bring that to this particular community at this particular time. So there is no tried and true formula, I would say. Other people might disagree with me there. You kind of need to read the room a little bit and see. There's been some initiatives that I thought were absolutely stellar. Like, of course, this is going to be awesome. And they didn't take the way that I thought they would. There have been other ones where I was like, yeah, whatever. It is what it is. And like, oh my goodness, that had such a massive effect on the community, right? So I think for me, it's not discounting or hyping any one thing. It's really about managing the change process to help the community move forward. And it's something that, everyone is still trying to perfect. If anybody says they know how to do it, I would say take that with a huge grain of salt. But there are people who know what to look for and who know things to think about and who know the questions to ask to ensure that the process goes more smoothly. Those are the people that I learn a lot from. And I think those are kind of the mistakes that I hold on. It's like, oh yeah, I could have done that differently. We could have involved the parents more or involved the students more, or, done things a little bit in a way that was a little bit more inclusive or open or transparent. Or sometimes it's like, we just needed to make a decision. And that's what people were waiting for. And so it's learning from those types of mistakes that I think are helping me get better at this from a macro level, right? Not from an in-class micro level, but from like a macro, how do we help support the culture of the organization?
It is so great to hear from so many different coaches the kind of stumbles they've had on their way along their career path. It's okay that not everything we do as coaches is perfect, and it's most important that we actually learn from those experiences. So hopefully today's examples of brilliant mistakes, maybe failures that turned into successes, will inspire you to keep trying, keep plugging away at things that might not be working perfectly in your own coaching career. If you like this format, hearing from lots of different perspectives on a single topic, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel to get all 12 videos in the series. Turn on notifications to find out when we're live on YouTube and to be the first to see the next installment. Have questions about instructional coaching, or would you like to see a specific video series related to anything about education and technology? Leave us a comment below and let us know. Want to see even more instructional coaching resources after you've watched this series? Head on over to our website to check out our free resources, more videos, and online courses about teaching and learning and coaching in the digital world.